Marisol Jiménez, a brilliant neurosurgeon, discovers her millionaire husband's shocking betrayal. But instead of breaking down, she builds a revolution that exposes his darkest secrets and transforms her struggling community forever. Before we dive into the story, let's do what Sleepless in Seattle taught us. Share where you're listening from. Comment below. The operating room hums with focused energy as Marisol Jiménez guides her microsurgical scissors through the delicate tissue. Beneath her hands, a young patient's brain tissue glistens under the harsh surgical lights. Every movement must be precise. 1 millimeter's deviation could mean the difference between recovery and devastation. BP's holding steady, the anesthesiologist announces, 90/60. Marisol acknowledges this with the slightest nod, her attention fixed on the tumor's margins. After 4 hours of meticulous dissection, she's finally reaching the critical moment. The mass has wrapped itself around vital structures like an octopus, sending tendrils deep into the surrounding tissue. But Marisol has mapped each extension, planned each cut. Her hands remain perfectly steady as she separates the final adhesions. "Got it," she murmurs, carefully lifting the tumor free. The scrub nurse is ready with the specimen container, and Marisol deposits the mass with practiced efficiency. Time to close. Only now does she allow herself to notice the ache in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands that comes after hours of sustained micro-movements. But there's satisfaction too, the deep, quiet certainty that she's done everything possible for this patient. "Beautiful work, Dr. Jimenez," says Lisa, her favorite scrub nurse. That tumor looked impossible when we started. Marisol's eyes crinkle above her surgical mask. "Nothing's impossible, just hasn't been figured out yet." The words echo in her mind as she scrubs out 40 minutes later, watching soap bubbles swirl down the drain. It's been her mantra since residency, through countless surgeries, through building the free clinic, through all the times she's been told something couldn't be done. Yet lately, the phrase has taken on a hollow quality, like a bell that's been struck too many times. She's still pondering this when Dr. Harrison, the hospital administrator, corners her in the hallway. He's wearing his politician's smile, the one that never quite reaches his eyes. "Marisol, excellent work in there. The boy's family is overjoyed." He falls into step beside her, his Italian loafers clicking against the linoleum. "And I hear congratulations are in order. You've been shortlisted for the Roth Innovation Award." "Thanks, James." Marisol keeps walking, hoping he'll take the hint. "But it's just a nomination. Plenty of deserving candidates this year. Don't be modest. But between your surgical record and that free clinic of yours..." He trails off as his phone buzzes. Excuse me, board meeting. But we should discuss this more at the gala next week. Alejandro's coming, I assume." Of course, the lie slides out easily, practiced. She hasn't actually asked Alejandro yet, knows it will lead to another argument about her excessive community involvement. But Dr. Harrison doesn't need to know that. She escapes to her office, closing the door with a soft click. The space is spare, functional. Just her desk, a few medical texts, and a single photo of her parents at their small mechanics shop in East LA. No designer art pieces or expensive furniture like the other department heads display. The simplicity centers her, reminds her of where she came from and why she does this work. Her phone buzzes, a text from Alejandro. "Running late. Don't wait up." Marisol stares at the message, feeling that familiar mix of relief and guilt. Relief because she won't have to maintain the facade of the perfect wife tonight. Guilt because she shouldn't feel relieved about her husband's absence. The drive home takes her past her free clinic, and she slows automatically, checking the lights. Dark now, but tomorrow they'll see 40 patients, maybe more. People who can't afford fancy hospitals or private insurance. People like her parents used to be, working 3 jobs between them and still 1 medical bill away from disaster. Their house, mansion really, looms ahead, all clean lines and dramatic lighting. Alejandro's Tesla sits in the circular drive, which is unexpected. She thought he said he'd be late. Inside, his voice drifts from his home office, sharp with irritation. "No, absolutely not. The margins aren't high enough. I don't care about their social impact rating. This is about returns." Marisol pauses in the doorway, taking in the scene. Alejandro paces behind his massive desk, phone pressed to his ear. His suit jacket is draped over a chair, shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal his expensive watch. He catches her eye and mouths 5 minutes before turning back to his call. She used to find his intensity attractive, the way he could command a room, make million-dollar decisions without flinching. Now she mostly notices how he never seems to consider the human cost of those decisions. The kitchen is state-of-the-art, all gleaming surfaces and professional-grade appliances. Most of them have never been used. Marisol opens the fridge, stares at its carefully organized contents. Their housekeeper keeps it stocked with organic produce and prepared meals, but nothing appeals. Sorry about that. Alejandro appears in the doorway, his phone finally dark. Client crisis. He crosses to her, plants a distracted kiss on her cheek. His cologne is expensive, familiar, yet somehow it makes her want to step back. How was surgery? Successful. Complex tumor in a 12-year-old. We got clean margins. He's already checking his phone again. Listen, about the Carlton Foundation Gala next week, we need to make an appearance. Howard Carlton's son is launching a new fund, and I want first crack at the management contract. Marisol leans against the counter, suddenly tired. I have clinic that morning. You know how draining those days are. It's important, Marisol. His tone sharpens. These connections matter more than spending your time giving away free healthcare to people who what? She meets his gaze steadily. Who deserve to die because they're poor? That's not what I meant. But his jaw tightens, betraying him. I just think you could be more strategic with your time. You're brilliant, Mary. You could be running the neurology department by now if you focused more on networking and less on charity cases. The old argument settles between them like a wall. Marisol closes her eyes briefly, too exhausted to scale it tonight. Fine, I'll be there. Good. His phone buzzes again, and he's already turning away. Wear the blue Versace. It photographs well. Later in her study, Marisol reviews patient files for tomorrow's clinic. The space is her sanctuary, walls lined with medical texts instead of the modern art Alejandro prefers. Her desk faces a window that overlooks the garden, though it's too dark now to see more than her own reflection. She pauses on a familiar name, Rosa Martinez, scheduled for a follow-up. Last month, Rosa brought in her young son with severe headaches. The boy turned out to have a benign but dangerous cyst, something that could have become fatal if they hadn't caught it early. Insurance would have denied the MRI that found it, calling it unnecessary. But at the clinic, Marisol could order whatever tests she deemed appropriate. The boy's wide smile after surgery flashes in her mind, along with Rosa's tears of gratitude. No amount of galas or networking events could match that feeling. But Alejandro will never understand that. His world measures success in dollars and cents, in power lunches and charity auctions where the wealthy congratulate themselves on their generosity, while changing nothing about the systems that create poverty. Marisol rubs her temples, feeling the weight of the day settle into her bones. The gap between her world and Alejandro's seems to widen with each passing month, like continents drifting slowly but inexorably apart. Soon there will be an ocean between them, too vast to bridge. Her phone lights up with a text from Sophia. How's my favorite superhero surgeon? A smile tugs at her lips as she types back. Tired. Just finished a tough case. You work too hard, Sophia replies. When are you and Alejandro taking that vacation he keeps talking about? Marisol's smile fades. The vacation is just another prop in their carefully curated public image, like the designer clothes and the perfectly decorated house. She starts to type a response, then deletes it. Some things are too complicated to explain, even to her oldest friend. Instead, she turns back to her patient files, losing herself in the familiar rhythm of medical histories and treatment plans. Here, at least, things make sense. Here, she knows exactly who she is and what she's fighting for. The house creaks and settles around her as the night deepens. Somewhere above, Alejandro is probably still working, making deals that will increase the wealth gap her clinic tries so desperately to bridge. The irony would be funny if it weren't so painful. Marisol reaches for another file, pushing away thoughts of her marriage and its careful facades. Tomorrow there will be patients who need her, problems she can actually solve. For now, that has to be enough. The sound of Alejandro's phone call drifts down the hallway, his laugh sharp and unfamiliar. Marisol pauses, pen hovering over her notes. When was the last time she heard him laugh like that with her? She can't remember. The question lingers as she prepares for bed, going through her nightly routine on autopilot. In the bathroom mirror, her reflection looks back at her with tired eyes. She's still beautiful. The expensive creams and treatments Alejandro insists on have seen to that. But there's something hollow in her face, something that all the luxury skincare in the world can't fix. She slides into bed just as Alejandro's voice rises again from his office, the words indistinct but the tone intimate, in a way that makes her stomach clench. Probably just another late client call. But lately, everything about their marriage feels like a question she's afraid to ask. Sleep eludes her, thoughts circling like restless birds. Tomorrow, she'll save lives at the clinic, then come home to play her role in their carefully choreographed life. The pattern will repeat day after day until something breaks. As if sensing her thoughts, Alejandro's laugh floats up again, softer now, secret. Marisol turns away from his empty side of the bed, pulling the silk sheets tighter around her shoulders. In the darkness, she allows herself to wonder how much longer she can live this double life, healer and society wife, community servant and wealthy socialite. The answer whispers at the edges of her consciousness, but she's not ready to hear it. Not yet. Instead, she focuses on tomorrow's patients, letting their needs and stories fill her mind until sleep finally claims her. But even in her dreams, that unfamiliar laugh echoes, carrying questions she can't ignore forever. Morning light streams through the clinic's weathered windows as Marisol arranges supplies in the cramped examination room. The space is a far cry from her pristine hospital operating theater. Linoleum floors instead of epoxy, basic equipment instead of cutting-edge technology. But there's a different kind of beauty here in the way every donated item and salvaged piece of furniture represents someone's belief in their mission. The waiting room already hums with quiet conversation in Spanish and English. Through the thin walls, Marisol catches fragments of familiar stories. The construction worker with chronic back pain, the elderly woman whose diabetes medication costs more than her monthly Social Security check, the young mother worried about her child's persistent cough. Dr. Jiménez? Maria, their volunteer coordinator, pokes her head in. Mrs. Rodriguez is here with her son Miguel, the one from last month's surgery. Marisol's face brightens. Send them in. Miguel bounds through the door, all gangly limbs and bright energy, his mother following more slowly. The surgical scar on his temple has healed to a thin pink line, barely visible beneath his dark hair. ¿Cómo te sientes? Marisol asks, crouching to his level. Muy bien. His grin is infectious. No more headaches. I can play football again. Mrs. Rodriguez clasps Marisol's hands, eyes shining. And we prayed for an angel, and God sent us you. Without this clinic. She trails off, emotion thick in her voice. This is why we're here, Marisol says simply, squeezing the woman's hands. But her throat tightens, remembering how close they'd come to missing Miguel's condition. If they hadn't had that donated MRI machine, if she hadn't insisted on the scan despite the cost. Her phone vibrates. Alejandro. She glimpses the message preview. Don't forget dinner with the Carltons tonight. Wear something appropriate. The words land like a stone in her stomach, the weight of her other life intruding. She silences the phone, turning back to Miguel's examination. Here, in this moment, she knows exactly who she is and what matters. Later, as sunlight fades to dusk, Marisol sits in her car outside their house, gathering strength for the evening ahead. Through the windows, she can see Alejandro moving through the living room, phone pressed to his ear as always. The house lights paint him in stark shadows, somehow both familiar and foreign. She checks her reflection in the rearview mirror, making sure her appearance meets his standards. The designer dress feels like armor, the perfect makeup, a mask. Sometimes she wonders if Alejandro would even recognize the woman who spends her mornings treating patients in a community clinic, her surgical precision turned to suturing wounds and diagnosing ailments that poverty has left untreated for too long. The thought follows her inside, where Alejandro barely glances up from his phone. You're late. We need to leave in 20 minutes. The clinic ran over. There was a case. There's always a case. His tone dismisses both her work and her explanation. The Carltons don't like to be kept waiting, and you might want to change. That dress is a bit casual for their crowd. Marisol looks down at her clothes, the simple black dress she'd chosen carefully this morning, hoping it would transition well from clinic to dinner. Of course, it isn't good enough. Nothing about her real self ever is in his world. 3 nights later, Marisol lies awake in their too-large bed, listening to Alejandro's footsteps in the hallway. The grandfather clock downstairs chimes midnight, then 1, then 2. His voice drifts up periodically, too faint to make out words but clear enough to catch the tone. Warm, intimate, punctuated by that unfamiliar laugh she's been hearing more often lately. She should be sleeping. Tomorrow brings a full surgical schedule, followed by a board meeting where she'll once again advocate for expanding the community outreach programs. Instead, she's tracking her husband's movements like a detective, noting how he paces the same stretch of hallway outside his office, speaking too softly for normal business calls. The floor creaks near their bedroom door. Marisol closes her eyes, evening out her breathing. The door opens, letting in a slice of light and the tail end of Alejandro's conversation. "Miss you too. Soon. I promise." Her heart pounds against her ribs, but she keeps her breathing steady. The bed dips as he slides in beside her, not touching, careful to maintain the distance that's become normal between them. His cologne carries a different scent tonight, something floral and feminine that doesn't belong to him. Morning finds her in Dr. Elena Morales' office, the words spilling out before she can stop them. "I think Alejandro's having an affair." Elena, her mentor since residency, studies her over steepled fingers. The older woman's office is a contrast to the sterile hospital environment. Walls lined with photos of her work in refugee camps, awards mixed carelessly with children's drawings from grateful patients. "Are you sure?" Elena's voice is gentle but probing. "Or are you looking for a reason to leave?" The question hits too close to home. Marisol stands, pacing the small space. "Does it matter? Either way, I'm living a lie, playing the perfect wife at his business dinners while he mocks my work at the clinic, pretending we're some kind of power couple when we barely speak outside of public events." Then maybe the real question isn't about Alejandro at all. Elena leans forward, her dark eyes intense. Maybe it's about what you want your legacy to be. Are you going to be remembered as Alejandro Vega's wife or as the woman who revolutionized community healthcare? The words echo in Marisol's mind hours later as she sits through the board meeting. The other department heads drone on about budgets and efficiency metrics while she thinks about Elena's question, about legacies and choices and the weight of silence. Her presentation about expanding community programs is met with polite nods and vague promises to review the proposal. She recognizes the dismissal in their eyes, the same look Alejandro gets when she talks about her clinic. As if helping the underserved is a cute hobby, something to mention at charity galas but not to take seriously. That night, Alejandro's phone buzzes during dinner. He glances at the screen and something softens in his face, an expression she hasn't seen directed at her in years. The phone vanishes into his pocket, but the damage is done. The text appears on Alejandro's phone by accident. Marisol doesn't mean to see it. She's just reaching for the salt when his screen lights up on the kitchen counter. But the preview catches her eye, stopping her breath. "Last night was amazing. Still thinking about your hands on my..." The rest disappears as the screen dims, but those words burn into her vision like a camera flash. She sets the salt down with shaking fingers, her mind spinning between denial and recognition. How many late nights, how many business calls with that intimate laugh? "Dr. Jiménez?" Her assistant's voice breaks through the fog. "They're ready for you in the Innovation Summit breakout session." Marisol blinks, forcing herself back to the present. She's at the hospital's annual Medical Innovation Summit, where she's supposed to be focusing on the future of healthcare, not her crumbling marriage. The conference room buzzes with energy as she slips into her seat, trying to ground herself in the familiar language of medical advancement. The speaker takes the stage, tall, with an intensity that commands attention even before he begins. "I'm Gabriel Navarro," he says, his voice carrying a hint of his Mexican heritage in its warmth. "And I'm here to talk about democratizing healthcare through artificial intelligence." Despite her distraction, Marisol finds herself leaning forward. Gabriel's presentation isn't the usual tech industry promises. He talks about AI that could help diagnose conditions in communities without specialists, about making advanced medical knowledge accessible to clinics like hers. His passion reminds her of her own early days, before compromise and disappointment started dulling her dreams. The technology exists, he says, dark eyes scanning the room. What we lack is the courage to challenge the status quo, to put these tools in the hands of those who need them most. Their eyes meet across the room, and something electric passes between them, recognition perhaps of a shared vision. Or maybe just the relief of finding someone else who sees healthcare as more than a business. After the presentation, Gabriel finds her in the hallway. Up close, his energy is even more compelling, but it's his questions that catch her off guard. He doesn't ask about her hospital position or her surgeon's credentials. Instead, he asks about her clinic, about the patients she serves, about the gaps she sees in the system. We should talk more about implementing this in your community, he says. Your experience with underserved populations would be invaluable. The conversation flows easily, professionally, but with an underlying current of possibility that makes her pulse quicken. This could be the answer she's been looking for, a way to scale her impact beyond one clinic, one surgery at a time. Her phone buzzes. Another message from Alejandro. Working late again. Don't wait up. The lie tastes bitter now that she knows the truth. She turns back to Gabriel, who's watching her with quiet understanding. Tell me more about your vision for community implementation, she says, and for the first time in months, she feels something like hope. Marisol waits in Alejandro's home office, the damning text message burning in her memory. The room is aggressively masculine, all dark wood and leather, carefully crafted to project power. Just like their marriage, that, she thinks, built for show rather than substance. His keys scrape in the door at 11:30. She hears him pause in the foyer, probably noticing the light under his office door. His footsteps approach, measured and steady. You're up late, he says from the doorway, his tone carefully neutral. The collar of his shirt is slightly askew, and that unfamiliar floral scent clings to him like an accusation. Who is she? The words hang in the air between them. Alejandro's face doesn't change, but his hand tightens on the doorframe. I don't know what you're... Don't. Marisol's voice comes out stronger than she expects. I saw the text. I've heard your late-night calls. Just don't lie to me anymore. Instead of denial or guilt, his expression hardens into something like contempt. You want to talk about lies? Let's talk about how you've checked out of this marriage. About how you'd rather play saint at that clinic than be a proper wife. About how you... A proper wife? The laugh that escapes her sounds foreign to her own ears. You mean someone who stays quiet and looks pretty at your business dinners? Someone who doesn't challenge your worldview or make you question your precious status quo? Someone who understands priorities. He steps into the room, looming over her desk. I've given you everything. This house, your clinic, all of it. And what do you do? Waste your talent on people who can't even pay for treatment. The words crystallize everything wrong with their marriage. Marisol stands, her chair scraping against hardwood. You've never understood. This isn't about money. It's about making a difference, about helping people who... Oh, spare me the nobility. His voice drips with disdain. You love playing the hero, don't you? Saint Marisol, sacrificing everything for the poor. Meanwhile, I'm working to maintain the lifestyle that makes your little charity project possible. Charity project? Heat rushes to her face. That charity project saved 3 lives this week. What did you do, besides lie to your wife and sleep with your mistress? The silence that follows is deafening. Alejandro's face goes still, a muscle ticking in his jaw. When he speaks, his voice is ice. You want the truth? Fine. Yes, I'm having an affair. Because my wife stopped being my wife years ago. She became a crusader instead, too busy saving the world to notice her marriage falling apart. Marisol absorbs the blow, feeling strangely calm. You're right about one thing. I did stop being your wife. I stopped pretending your world of wealth and privilege was enough. I stopped ignoring the people who need help just because helping them doesn't turn a profit. She reaches for her purse, her movements deliberate. I'll have my lawyer contact yours in the morning. Don't be dramatic, he snaps. Where would you go? What would you do? That clinic of yours barely breaks even. I'm collaborating with Gabriel Navarro on an AI diagnostics program. The words come easily now that she's made her decision. We're going to revolutionize community healthcare, make it accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy. Alejandro's laugh is ugly. Gabriel Navarro? That idealistic fool who thinks technology can solve poverty? Perfect. You two deserve each other. Maybe we do. Marisol heads for the door, then pauses. You know what the difference is between him and you? He sees the world as it could be, not just as a balance sheet. She walks out of his office, out of their house, into the cool night air. Her hands should be shaking, she thinks, but they're surgeon steady. Behind her, the mansion looms like a museum piece, beautiful, expensive, and ultimately empty of real life. Her phone buzzes. A message from Gabriel about the AI implementation timeline. Tomorrow, she'll dive into that work, start building something meaningful. But tonight, she just drives, watching the streets of Los Angeles blur past her window, feeling lighter with each mile between her and the life she's leaving behind. The cardboard box feels light in Marisol's hands as she climbs the stairs to Sophia's third-floor apartment. 3 decades of marriage, reduced to a handful of essential items. Her surgical textbooks, some clothes. The photo of her parents that used to sit in her office, their proud smiles frozen in time outside their mechanic shop. Sophia's building stands in stark contrast to the mansion she's leaving behind. No manicured lawns or security gates, just a simple brick structure in a working-class neighborhood. The kind of place where her patients live. The kind of place she came from. Mi casa es tu casa, Sophia says, swinging open her door. The apartment smells like café de olla and fresh-baked pan dulce, comforting scents from their shared childhood. Though I warn you, the hot water's temperamental and the neighbors play mariachi at odd hours. Marisol manages a weak smile. Sounds perfect. Sophia studies her face, dark eyes sharp with concern. Siéntate. I'll make tea. They settle on Sophia's worn couch, mugs of chamomile steaming between them. Outside, a car alarm wails briefly before falling silent. The normalcy of it all, sitting here with her oldest friend, surrounded by Sophia's eclectic mix of art prints and family photos, makes something crack in Marisol's carefully maintained composure. What if I'm making a mistake? The words escape before she can stop them. Walking away from everything we built. Everything he built, Sophia corrects firmly. Your success is your own. The clinic, your surgical practice, those belong to you, Mari, not to him. The board members might disagree. Marisol's fingers tighten around her mug. Most of them got their positions through Alejandro's connections. Then they're idiots who don't deserve you. Sophia leans forward, her voice fierce. You didn't leave your parents' garage in East LA, put yourself through med school, and become one of the top neurosurgeons in the country just to play trophy wife to some pendejo who can't keep it in his pants. The crude description of Alejandro startles a laugh from Marisol. It sounds rusty, unpracticed. When was the last time she really laughed? Besides, Sophia continues, you have something better now, this AI project with Gabriel. It's not like that, Marisol interrupts quickly. We're just colleagues. Sophia's eyebrow arches. Did I say anything about it being more? Interesting where your mind went, though. Heat creeps up Marisol's neck. She stands abruptly, needing to move. I should unpack. Early clinic day tomorrow. Always working. Sophia's tone softens. But maybe that's what you need right now. Just promise me one thing. Marisol pauses in the doorway to the spare room. What? Remember, you're allowed to be happy, not just successful. Happy. The words follow Marisol as she unpacks her meager belongings, arranging them in the small space. Her designer clothes look absurd here, like costumes from a play she's finally stopped performing. She hangs them anyway, muscle memory from years of keeping up appearances. When she's done, she sits on the twin bed, listening to the distant sounds of the city. A siren wails somewhere nearby, probably heading to County General. She should feel devastated, she thinks. Instead, beneath the anger and hurt, there's something that feels dangerously like freedom. Morning light filters through the clinic's weathered blinds as Marisol reviews patient files. The ancient desk fan hums in the corner, pushing around warm air thick with the scent of antiseptic. Her surgical schedule at the hospital doesn't start until afternoon, leaving these precious morning hours for the people who need her most. Dr. Jiménez, Maria, the volunteer coordinator, appears in the doorway. Her face shows the careful concern Marisol's grown tired of seeing since news of her separation spread. Senor Ramos is here early for his follow-up. Should I have him wait? No. Send him in. Marisol welcomes the distraction of work, the familiar rhythm of patient care. Senor Ramos shuffles in, leaning on his cane. His weathered face breaks into a smile that makes his eyes disappear into deep creases. Doctora, I brought you something. He sets a small paper bag on her desk. The rich scent of his wife's tamales wafts out, making Marisol's stomach growl. She hasn't been eating properly since leaving Alejandro, surviving on coffee and whatever Sofia forces on her. You didn't have to. Ah, but I did. He settles into the chair across from her, wincing slightly. After what you did for Miguel, my grandson, his voice roughens. The other doctors, they said his headaches were nothing. Just stress, they said. But you listened. You found the real problem. Marisol remembers the case, a 12-year-old with persistent headaches that turned out to be a slow-growing tumor, the kind of case that slips through the cracks in an overcrowded system where 15-minute appointments are the norm, the kind of case that reminds her why she built this place. Miguel starts high school next week, Senor Ramos continues, beaming with grandfather's pride. Top of his class, he wants to be a doctor now, like you. Something tightens in Marisol's chest. How is he feeling? Like new. No more headaches. Senor Ramos leans forward, his expression serious. You know, people talk. They say your husband. He stops at her slight flinch. Perdón. I just want you to know, this community, we stand with you, whatever you need. Marisol swallows hard. Thank you. Now let's check your blood pressure. The morning passes in a blur of patients, each with their own stories, their own battles against a system that too often sees them as statistics rather than people. A young mother worried about her baby's cough, an elderly woman rationing insulin, a construction worker whose chronic back pain threatens his livelihood. Marisol loses herself in the work, finding steady ground in the simple act of helping. Here, her worth isn't measured in designer clothes or charity gala appearances. Here, she knows exactly who she is and what she's fighting for. By noon, her white coat pockets bulge with small offerings from grateful patients. Bags of homemade tortillas, prayer cards, a drawing from a child whose asthma she's helping manage. These gifts, worth nothing in Alejandro's world of high finance, feel more valuable than all the jewelry he ever gave her. The cafe buzzes with afternoon energy as Marisol slides into a corner booth, careful not to wrinkle the stack of clinic data she's brought. Gabriel Navarro's choice of meeting place surprises her. It's a small Mexican restaurant in East LA, not the sleek downtown spots where tech executives usually hold court. Dr. Jiménez. Gabriel appears, setting down 2 cups of café de olla. No designer suit, just dark jeans and a button down with rolled sleeves. His smile carries the same intensity she remembers from his presentation. I hope you don't mind. The coffee here reminds me of my grandmother's. You grew up in the area? Echo Park, before the gentrification. He pulls out a laptop, his movements precise and focused. But we're not here to discuss demographics unless they relate to our implementation timeline. The screen fills with charts and projections, user interfaces, diagnostic algorithms, deployment schedules. Gabriel's energy is infectious as he walks her through each element, his hands moving expressively as he speaks. If we push hard, we could have a beta version ready in 3 months. Start with basic diagnostic tools, then layer in machine learning as we gather more data. The potential impact. 3 months? Marisol frowns at the timeline. Gabriel, these communities have been burned before by rushed solutions. They need technology that works consistently, not just impressive demos. His enthusiasm dims slightly. The longer we wait, the more people slip through the cracks. You've seen it yourself in your clinic, which is exactly why we can't afford to get this wrong. She pulls out her clinic data, spreading papers across the table. Look at these cases. Patients with multiple chronic conditions, complicated medical histories, cultural factors that affect treatment compliance. The AI needs to account for all of this. Gabriel leans forward, studying the files. His expression shifts from frustration to focused interest. Show me more. What patterns are you seeing? For the next hour, they dive deep into case studies. Gabriel's questions are sharp, insightful, pushing her to articulate challenges she's internalized over years of practice. His technical knowledge complements her medical expertise in ways that start to feel like actual solutions. What about language barriers? He asks, making rapid notes. We could integrate real-time translation, cultural context awareness. and accessibility features for elderly patients, those with limited tech experience, natural language processing to handle symptom descriptions in different dialects. Their ideas flow faster, building on each other. Marisol finds herself leaning in, caught up in the possibility of real change. This is what's been missing in her conversations with hospital administrators and board members: genuine understanding of both the problems and the people affected. "You're right," Gabriel says finally, running a hand through his dark hair. 3 months is too aggressive. We need to build trust, not just software." He looks up, meeting her eyes. "I get excited about the technology, but you see the whole picture. That's why we need you leading this." The words catch her off guard. "Leading? I thought you wanted me as a medical consultant. I want you as a partner." His voice carries quiet conviction. "Your experience, your connection to the community, that's not something we can code. It's the foundation everything else has to build on." A year ago, Marisol might have hesitated, worried about Alejandro's reaction to her taking on another major commitment. Now, looking at the potential spread across the table between them, she feels that dangerous freedom again. "Partners, then," she extends her hand. "But we do this right." His grip is firm, warm. "Agreed, though I reserve the right to keep pushing for faster timelines. And I reserve the right to keep pushing back." Their eyes meet across the table, and something electric passes between them. Recognition of shared purpose, perhaps, or just the relief of finding someone else who sees healthcare as more than a business model. The moment stretches, breaks. Gabriel checks his phone, frowning slightly. "I have another meeting, but send me your thoughts on implementation phases. I want to revise the timeline based on today's discussion." Marisol gathers her papers, suddenly aware of how much time has passed. "I'll have it to you by tomorrow." Outside, the late afternoon sun throws long shadows across the street. Marisol watches Gabriel's Tesla disappear into traffic, her mind already racing with possibilities. For the first time since leaving Alejandro, she feels fully awake, energized by more than just survival. Night settles over Sophia's apartment, bringing with it the neighborhood's familiar symphony: distant traffic, fragments of music drifting up from the street, the rhythmic thump of someone's bass. Marisol sits cross-legged on her borrowed bed, journal open in her lap. The leather-bound volume was a gift from Elena years ago, its pages filled with surgical notes and patient observations. Now it holds something raw. "I should feel broken," she writes, her normally precise handwriting loose and hurried. 15 years of marriage ending in a text message and a stranger's perfume. But mostly I feel angry. At Alejandro, yes, but more at myself. For compromising. For letting his world become mine, even when it went against everything I believed in. She pauses, pen hovering over paper. Through the thin walls, she hears Sophia moving around the kitchen, probably making her signature late-night cafe con leche. The homey sound grounds her. The clinic needs the AI project to work, not just for funding, but to prove it's possible to do medicine differently, to show that innovation doesn't have to mean leaving people behind. Her phone buzzes, an email from Gabriel with his revised timeline notes. The sight of his name brings back that spark of energy from their meeting, the way ideas seem to catch fire between them. She adds, "Gabriel sees it too. The possibility of real change. He pushes too hard, moves too fast, but his heart is in the right place." Unlike, she stops, crosses out the last words. No point in comparisons. Alejandro belongs to her past, a lesson learned at great cost. The future, uncertain as it is, calls to her with greater urgency. "Tomorrow," she writes, her strokes becoming firmer, "I start rebuilding, not just my life, but something bigger, something that matters." A soft knock interrupts her thoughts. Sophia appears in the doorway holding 2 steaming mugs. "Pensando mucho?" Marisol accepts the coffee, breathing in its familiar comfort. "Just processing. Anything you want to share?" "I had a meeting with Gabriel today." Marisol traces the mug's rim with her finger. "About the AI project. It's ambitious, maybe too ambitious, but it excites you." Sophia settles beside her on the bed. "I can see it in your face, that fire you used to have before." She stops tactfully. "Before I let Alejandro's world become more important than my own." The words don't hurt as much as they should. "You can say it. You never liked him anyway. Because I saw what he did to you, how he dimmed your light, poco a poco." Sophia's voice carries years of unspoken concern. But that light's coming back, Hermana. I can see it. Marisol closes her journal, pressing her palm against its worn cover. I'm scared, Sophie, not of Alejandro, but of failing. The clinic depends on me. These patients depend on me. If I can't make this work, then you'll find another way, like you always do. Sophia bumps her shoulder gently. But first, you need to sleep. Doctor's orders. A smile tugs at Marisol's lips. Since when are you a doctor? Since my best friend started forgetting to take care of herself. Sophia stands, collecting the empty mugs. Rest. Tomorrow will bring its own battles. After Sophia leaves, Marisol opens her journal one last time. In the margin, she writes a single line. I choose my own light now. The words feel like a promise, or maybe a prayer. Either way, they carry her into sleep, where she dreams not of what she's lost, but of what she might build from its ashes. Dr. Jimenez. The voice cuts across the hospital charity gala like a knife wrapped in silk. We've missed you at the foundation meetings. Marisol turns to face Margaret Carlton, her practiced smile firmly in place. The older woman's diamonds catch the light, matching the gleam of barely concealed curiosity in her eyes. I've been focused on the clinic, Marisol says, already scanning for an escape route. These events used to be her battlefield. Now they feel like enemy territory. Yes, we heard about that. Unfortunate situation with Alejandro. Margaret's voice drops to a stage whisper. Though honestly, dear, what did you expect? Men like him need certain things. A wife who's always working, always at that clinic. The crystal champagne flute trembles slightly in Marisol's hand. Before she can respond, another voice joins in. Perhaps what men like Alejandro need is a conscience. Sophia appears at Marisol's elbow, resplendent in a borrowed gown. Though I suppose that's harder to buy than a mistress. Margaret's face flushes. Well, I never. Then maybe you should start. Sophia links her arm through Marisol's. Excuse us. Doctor's duties call. They escape to a quiet corner, where Marisol releases a shaky breath. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. These vultures. Sophia stops as Marisol's phone buzzes. The message is from Dr. Harrison. Board meeting tomorrow. Funding concerns. Your presence required. They're moving faster than I expected, Marisol murmurs. Alejandro? Who else? The clinic's weekly staff meeting feels different today. Tension rides the air as Marisol presents Gabriel's AI diagnostic project. Her normally supportive team shifts uncomfortably in their chairs. With all due respect, Dr. Jimenez, Dr. Chen says, our patients need basics, insulin, antibiotics, prenatal care, not some fancy AI system that could fail when they need it most. Murmurs of agreement ripple through the room. Marisol forces herself to breathe steadily. The AI isn't replacing care. It's expanding our ability to provide it. Faster diagnoses, better tracking. Like those electronic health records that crashed last month? Maria asks. Our patients trust us because we see them, really see them, not through some computer screen. And how many do we miss? Marisol's voice sharpens. How many slip through because we're overwhelmed, because we can't be everywhere at once? Silence falls. They all know the numbers, the waiting lists, the patients they have to turn away. Her phone buzzes again. A text from an old colleague. Heard Alejandro's telling donors you're having a breakdown. Pushing too hard, neglecting your real work. Be careful. The warning lands like a punch, but Marisol keeps her face neutral. Review the proposal. We'll discuss implementation concerns next week. Outside her office, a young mother waits, cradling a fussy infant. Doctora, por favor. The other clinic said it's just colic, but something's wrong. I can feel it. An hour later, Marisol's careful examination reveals a subtle heart murmur, the kind that's easy to miss in a rushed checkup, the kind her proposed AI system could help catch earlier. We'll arrange a pediatric cardiology consult, she tells the relieved mother. Don't worry about the cost. We'll find a way. The woman's gratitude feels like a lifeline, a reminder of why she keeps fighting. Evening finds her in the clinic's small break room, staring at a formal letter from the hospital board. Budget reviews, performance evaluations. Alejandro's influence casts long shadows. The door opens. Coffee? Gabriel steps in, holding 2 cups from their cafe. I heard about the staff meeting. News travels fast. She accepts the coffee, letting its warmth seep into her tired hands. They're scared of change, of failure, of success. Gabriel settles into the chair across from her. Success means growing beyond what's comfortable. Not everyone's ready for that. And you are? His eyes meet hers, serious despite his slight smile. I'm ready to try. Are you? Before she can answer, her phone lights up. A message from Elena. Hospital board's voting on community program funding tomorrow. Alejandro's been making calls. The pieces click into place. The sudden scrutiny, the whispered concerns, the budget reviews, a calculated attack on everything she's built. Gabriel. Her voice comes out steady, surprising her. How fast can you get a working demo of the AI system? His eyebrows raise. You said no rushing. Plans change. Sometimes we have to fight fire with fire. He studies her face, then nods. Give me 2 weeks. But Marisol, it won't be perfect. Nothing is. She stands, new energy coursing through her, but it might be enough to show them what's possible. The next 2 weeks blur into a frenzy of work. While Alejandro marshals his financial forces, Marisol splits her time between surgeries, clinic patients, and late nights with Gabriel's team, refining the AI prototype. Blood pressure's dropping, the anesthesiologist warns, during a particularly delicate surgery. Marisol's hands remain steady, her focus absolute. She can't afford mistakes, not now. Later, reviewing the AI's first diagnostic tests, that same intensity carries her through endless debugging sessions and interface refinements. Gabriel matches her determination hour for hour, his initial rush to completion tempered by her insistence on reliability. They're testing the system's language processing when Rosa Martinez bursts into the clinic, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Jiménez, the hospital, they're saying the free care program might end, that we'll have to pay full price or find somewhere else. Marisol feels the weight of every patient file in her cabinet, every life hanging in the balance. That's not going to happen. But how can you be sure? Because we're not fighting alone anymore. She glances at Gabriel, who nods almost imperceptibly. We're building something new, something they can't ignore. The AI test server hums in the background, processing its first real patient data. Not perfect, as Gabriel warned, but a beginning, a weapon in the fight for what matters. Run it again, she tells the development team. We've got one chance to get this right. The critical moment comes sooner than expected. During the AI's first live trial, with board members and potential donors watching, the system falters on a complex case presentation. You see, Dr. Harrison's voice carries false concern. Perhaps we should focus on more traditional approaches. But then the system recalibrates, drawing connections between symptoms that even Marisol hadn't spotted. The diagnosis proves correct, verified by subsequent tests. It's not about replacing doctors, she tells the stunned audience. It's about giving us better tools to help more people. Later, a thick envelope arrives at the clinic. Inside, Marisol finds legal papers, a cease and desist letter citing potential defamation regarding Alejandro's business practices. He's scared, Gabriel says when she shows him. We're changing the game and he can't control it. She remembers Sophia's words from weeks ago. You choose your own light now. Call everyone, she tells Gabriel. Staff, patients, community leaders. It's time to show them what we've built. The response overwhelms her. Rosa organizes a patient testimonial drive. Local businesses offer support. Even some hospital staff speak up, sharing stories of lives saved by the clinic's work. Standing in the clinic's waiting room, watching volunteers set up for their community presentation, Marisol feels that dangerous freedom again. But it's not dangerous anymore. It's powerful, necessary, real, ready. Gabriel asks, tablet in hand, the AI system humming with possibility. Marisol thinks of all the paths that led here, from her parents' garage to Stanford Med, from Alejandro's mansion to Sophia's spare room, from safe success to risky purpose. Ready, she says, and steps forward to fight for her vision of medicine, one algorithm, one patient, one victory at a time. The manila folder sits innocently on Marisol's desk, its edges worn and creased. She almost misses it at first, buried under clinic paperwork and grant applications. But as she sorts through the stack, something catches her eye. Her clinic's address printed in crisp black letters on a document that definitely isn't hers. She pulls it free, frowning. The letterhead bears Alejandro's company logo, and for a moment she considers simply returning it unopened. But a familiar street name jumps out at her, Cesar Chavez Avenue, where many of her patients live. Her hands grow cold as she reads. Investment strategies, predatory loans, real estate schemes targeting low-income neighborhoods. The very communities she serves at her clinic, systematically exploited by her husband's firm. The documents detail it all in the sterile language of finance, opportunity zones, and market corrections that really mean displacement and poverty. Dr. Jimenez, Maria appears in the doorway. Your next patient is ready. Just a minute. Marisol's voice sounds distant to her own ears as she scans another page. A map of planned developments shows red circles around multiple blocks near her clinic. Blocks where families she knows have lived for generations, where children she's treated play in narrow streets between aging apartment buildings. Her phone buzzes, Sophia calling. Marisol answers automatically, her eyes still fixed on the damning evidence before her. Girl, where are you? We were supposed to meet for coffee 20 minutes ago. Sophia. Marisol's fingers tighten on the papers. I need to show you something. Can you come to the clinic? There must be something in her tone because Sophia doesn't argue. On my way. The next hour passes in a blur of routine appointments, blood pressure checks, prescription refills, the familiar rhythm of patient care that usually centers her. But today, her mind keeps drifting to the folder locked in her desk drawer, to the communities that will be torn apart if these plans move forward, to her own unwitting complicity in it all. Sophia arrives as the last patient leaves, her heels clicking against linoleum. One look at Marisol's face and her expression shifts from annoyed to concerned. What's wrong? Marisol wordlessly hands her the folder. Watches as her friend's perfectly manicured nails flip through pages, her frown deepening with each revelation. Mari. Sophia's voice is careful. This is serious. If even half of what's in here is true, it's all true. Marisol paces the small office. I recognize Alejandro's notation style, his project codes, and look at the dates. These aren't old plans. This is happening now. Then you need to be very careful how you handle this. Sophia sets the folder down like it might bite. Alejandro has resources, connections. If you go public with this, if I don't, what happens to these families? Marisol gestures at the window where evening sunlight gilds the weathered buildings of her neighborhood. What happens to Mrs. Rodriguez, who's lived in her apartment for 40 years? To the Garcia kids who helped their father run the corner store? I'm not saying do nothing. Sophia catches her arm, forcing her to stop pacing. I'm saying be smart about this. Alejandro won't hesitate to destroy you if you threaten his business. Let him try. The words come out harder than intended, and Sophia steps back slightly. Sorry, I can't stay quiet about this. Not when I see these people every day. Not when they trust me to help them. Her phone buzzes again, Gabriel this time, checking on their AI implementation timeline. She stares at the message, an idea forming. I have to meet Gabriel tonight anyway, she says slowly. Maybe he can help figure out the best way to handle this. Sophia's expression turns knowing. Gabriel Navarro, the tech genius who looks like he just stepped off a GQ cover? That Gabriel? It's not like that. But Marisol feels heat rise in her cheeks. He understands what I'm trying to do here, the real impact we could have. Sophia gathers her purse, but her eyes are serious. Just be careful, okay? With all of it. I don't want to see you get hurt. Later, at the small cafe, where she often meets Gabriel to discuss their project, Marisol turns the flash drive containing copies of Alejandro's documents over and over in her hands. The coffee between them has gone cold, forgotten as she explains everything she's discovered. Gabriel listens without interrupting, his dark eyes intent. When she finally falls silent, he leans back, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. You know, he says finally, I almost went bankrupt 5 years ago. The non sequitur throws her. What? My first big venture. His mouth twists. I had this idea for democratizing financial services. Thought I could disrupt the whole system, make it work for everyone. But I moved too fast, cut corners I shouldn't have. When it fell apart, I lost almost everything. Money, reputation, relationships. He pauses, studying her face. The hardest part wasn't the failure itself. It was facing the people who trusted me, admitting I'd let them down. But you know what I learned? Marisol shakes her head. That integrity isn't about never making mistakes. It's about what you do when you discover them, how you make things right. His hand moves across the table like he might touch hers, then retreats. You're doing the right thing, Marisol, and you're not alone in this fight. The warmth in his voice wraps around her like a blanket, and suddenly she has to blink back tears. I just keep thinking about my patients, How many of them have already been affected by these schemes? How many more will be if we don't stop it? Then let's stop it. Gabriel pulls out his laptop. I have some contacts at the Chronicle who might be interested in this story. And the timing, actually, this could work in our favor with the Foundation meeting tomorrow. The grant presentation? Marisol frowns. I don't see how. Think about it. What we're proposing isn't just about AI diagnostics anymore. It's about creating sustainable community healthcare infrastructure, something that can help these neighborhoods resist predatory development. His fingers fly over the keyboard. If we frame it right, show the board the bigger picture. Understanding dawns. We could secure funding not just for the AI implementation, but for expanding the entire clinic program. Exactly. Gabriel's grin is infectious. Ready to change the world, Dr. Jimenez? Looking at him, at his absolute conviction that they can make a difference, Marisol feels something shift inside her, a certainty crystallizing where doubt used to live. Yes, she says simply. I am. The Foundation boardroom gleams with old money and polished mahogany. Marisol stands before the assembled trustees, her presentation slides reflecting off their expensive glasses and carefully neutral expressions. But she's not thinking about their wealth or their power to make or break her project. She's thinking about Rosa Martinez's son, who would have died without that MRI machine. About Mrs. Chen, who walks 3 miles to the clinic because she can't afford bus fare. About all the patients who've shared their stories, their hopes, their fears. The future of healthcare isn't about replacing human connection with technology, she says, her voice steady. It's about using technology to strengthen those connections, to break down barriers, to ensure that quality care isn't a luxury reserved for the wealthy. She clicks to the next slide, a heat map showing healthcare deserts in Los Angeles. The red zones correlate perfectly with Alejandro's investment targets, though she doesn't mention that yet. Our AI diagnostic system isn't just software. It's a bridge between communities and care, between knowledge and need. She meets each board member's eyes in turn. And with your support, we can build that bridge strong enough to last generations. The presentation flows from there, technical specifications blending seamlessly with human impact stories. Gabriel chimes in occasionally from his seat at the side of the room, adding technical depth to her medical expertise. They move together like dancers who've rehearsed for months instead of days. When she finishes, the silence stretches long enough to make her pulse quicken. Then the board chair, an elegant woman in her 60s, leans forward. Dr. Jimenez, she says slowly, I've sat through hundreds of grant presentations. Most of them promise innovation, disruption, paradigm shifts. Her lips quirk. Yours is the first I've seen that actually delivers on that promise. The grant approval comes unanimously. $5 million, with the possibility of renewal based on outcomes. More money than Marisol has ever had to work with, enough to transform her small clinic into something truly revolutionary. She maintains her professional composure through the handshakes and congratulations, through Gabriel's proud grin and the board members' business cards. It's not until she's alone in her office that she allows herself to cry. Tears of joy, of relief, of vindication. But there's no time to celebrate. She has one more task to complete today. The community center is packed for their monthly health fair. Familiar faces fill the rows of folding chairs, patients, neighbors, local business owners. Many of them live in the buildings marked for redevelopment in Alejandro's plans. Marisol takes the small stage, her heart pounding, but her voice clear. Thank you all for coming today. Before we begin our usual programming, there's something important I need to share with you. She tells them everything. About the predatory investment schemes, about how their homes and businesses have been targeted, about the systematic exploitation happening right under their noses. The room erupts in angry murmurs as she projects scanned copies of the documents onto the screen behind her. She sees shock turn to outrage, turn to determination on faces she's known for years. I'm telling you this not to cause panic, she continues, but because you deserve to know. Because knowledge is power. And because together we can fight back. She outlines their options: legal resources, community organizing strategies, the power of unified resistance. The local news crew in the back is filming everything, their presence arranged through Gabriel's contacts. This isn't just about healthcare anymore, she concludes. It's about justice, about standing up to those who see our community as nothing but numbers on a spreadsheet, about proving that solidarity is stronger than greed. The applause when she finishes is deafening. People surge forward to hug her, to share their stories, to ask how they can help. Through it all, she feels lighter than she has in months, maybe years. Later, as she's packing up her materials, Gabriel appears at her side. "That was incredible," he says softly. "You just changed the game completely." She turns to face him, struck by the pride and something deeper in his expression. "We changed it. I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Yes, you could have." He steps closer, his presence both comforting and electric. "But I'm glad you didn't have to." The moment stretches between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Then her phone buzzes, an angry text from Alejandro's lawyer. The first of many, she's sure. Gabriel reads it over her shoulder and frowns. "We should get our legal team involved. I know some excellent firms that already handled." Marisol allows herself a small smile. "I may be new to corporate warfare, but I learned a few things being married to Alejandro. Every document I shared today was carefully vetted by my lawyers. Everything I said is protected speech." "You really did think of everything." Gabriel's admiration is obvious. "Still, you should be careful. Men like Alejandro don't take kindly to being exposed." As if on cue, another text arrives, this one from a mutual acquaintance. "You have no idea what you've started. Back off now while you still can." Marisol stares at the words, feeling a flutter of fear in her stomach. But when she looks up at Gabriel's concerned face at the community center still buzzing with energy and purpose, she knows she won't back down. "Let him try," she says, echoing her earlier words to Sophia. But this time there's no anger in them, only determination. "We have truth on our side, and after today, we have an army." The evening news leads with her speech. By midnight, Justice for East LA is trending on social media. Alejandro's firm issues a carefully worded statement about reviewing investment strategies and community engagement, but the damage is done. In her apartment that night, Marisol watches the coverage with a strange sense of unreality. The woman on screen, poised, passionate, unafraid, seems like someone else entirely. Not the careful surgeon who spent years trying to change things from within the system. Not the perfect wife who smiled at charity galas while silently screaming. Her phone hasn't stopped buzzing. Supporters and critics, journalists wanting comments, old friends choosing sides. She turns it off, needing silence to process everything that's happened. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. Alejandro's retaliation, media scrutiny, the hard work of implementing their AI system while protecting the community from corporate vultures. But tonight, she allows herself to feel the full weight of what she's accomplished. On her desk, next to the grant paperwork and legal documents, sits a small photo of her parents outside their mechanic's shop. They're young in the picture, their smiles bright with hope, despite the poverty evident in their worn clothes and tired eyes. "I did it, Mommy Poppy," she whispers. "I finally found my voice." Somewhere in the city, she knows Alejandro is probably plotting his revenge. His world of wealth and power is designed to crush people like her, people who dare to challenge the status quo. But for the first time since she left him, Marisol isn't afraid. She has truth on her side. She has Gabriel's unwavering support. And most importantly, she has a community standing with her, ready to fight for their homes, their health, their future. Let Alejandro come. She's finally exactly where she needs to be. The morning headlines blast across every major news outlet in Los Angeles. Hedge fund giant accused of predatory practices in East La. Marisol watches the coverage spread like wildfire across social media, financial news sites, and local television. Video clips of her speech play on repeat, interspersed with infographics breaking down Alejandro's schemes. They're calling for an SEC investigation, Gabriel tells her over coffee in her office. He scrolls through his tablet, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he's been up all night monitoring the fallout. 3 major clients have already pulled their investments from Vega Capital. Marisol nods, trying to ignore the knot in her stomach. She's seen the other headlines too, the ones questioning her motives, suggesting she's a vindictive ex-wife trying to destroy her husband's business. But those voices are drowned out by the surge of support from unexpected quarters. "Dr. Jimenez?" Maria pokes her head in. There's a reporter from the LA Times here, and we've received 15 donation offers since opening this morning. The clinic has become a symbol of resistance, drawing supporters from across the city. Medical students volunteer their time, local businesses drop off food and supplies. Even some of Alejandro's former colleagues quietly reach out, offering information about other predatory schemes targeting vulnerable communities. But with the support comes scrutiny. Photographers camp outside the clinic, forcing Marisol to install privacy screens to protect patient confidentiality. Every aspect of her life is suddenly public property: her marriage, her work, her motivations. Your security team is in place, Gabriel assures her, his hand brushing hers as he hands her a coffee. And our legal team is monitoring everything. We won't let him blindside us. As if summoned by his words, Marisol's phone lights up with a message from an unlisted number. Hope you enjoyed your moment in the spotlight. Better watch your back. She shows it to Gabriel, who immediately starts typing on his phone. I'll have our people trace. Don't bother. Marisol sets her phone down with deliberate calm. This is just the beginning. He'll try to pressure donors, spread rumors, maybe even target the grant funding. But we knew this was coming. Marisol? Gabriel's voice is soft but intense. You don't have to face this alone. She looks around her small office, at the patient files representing lives she's touched, at the grant paperwork that will help her touch so many more, at the man who's become so much more than just an ally. I know, she says simply. That's why we're going to win. Outside her window, the clinic bustles with activity. Patients check in, volunteers coordinate supplies, and somewhere in the city, wheels are turning that will change the landscape of community healthcare forever. The battle lines are drawn, but for the first time in her life, Marisol knows exactly which side she's on. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new threats, new opportunities. But tonight, she allows herself to feel the quiet triumph of finally choosing truth over comfort, justice over security, purpose over pretense. Let Alejandro plot his revenge. She has work to do. Fluorescent lights hum overhead as Marisol adjusts the laptop display one final time. Around her, the cramped community clinic buzzes with anticipation. Doctors in white coats mingle with volunteers in scrubs, while patients fill every available chair in the waiting area. The paint may be peeling and the linoleum floor scuffed, but today, this humble space crackles with possibility. Gabriel catches her eye from across the room, giving a subtle nod. His presence grounds her, tall and steady in his carefully casual tech entrepreneur attire, radiating quiet confidence. He's traded his usual blazer for a simple button-down, a conscious choice to match the clinic's unpretentious atmosphere. Ready? He mouths. Marisol squares her shoulders, touching the small gold cross at her neck. Her mother's, worn smooth by years of worried fingers. The familiar weight centers her as she steps forward to address the crowd. Buenos dias a todos, she begins, her voice carrying to the back of the room. Thank you all for being here today. What we're launching isn't just new technology. It's a statement that quality healthcare shouldn't depend on your zip code or bank account. The faces before her reflect decades of systemic inequity. The construction worker with untreated chronic pain, the elderly woman rationing insulin, the young mother worried about affording her child's asthma medication. These are her people, the ones who've been failed by a system that views healthcare as a privilege rather than a right. Our AI diagnostic system won't replace doctors, she continues, gesturing to the screen behind her. It will empower us to serve more patients, catch problems earlier, and ensure no one falls through the cracks due to lack of specialists or resources. Gabriel steps forward, his movements fluid as he pulls up the interface. The system works by analyzing symptoms, medical history, and vital signs, he explains, his accent adding warmth to the technical terms. It can suggest potential diagnoses, flag urgent cases, and provide evidence-based treatment recommendations, all in real time. A murmur ripples through the crowd as he demonstrates, inputting sample symptoms. Within seconds, the system generates a detailed analysis, complete with probability percentages and suggested follow-up tests. Maria Rodriguez? Marisol calls out. Would you be willing to be our first patient? An elderly woman rises slowly, aided by her granddaughter, Her arthritis-twisted hands clutch a worn purse, but her eyes shine with determination. As Gabriel guides her through the intake process, Marisol watches the room lean forward collectively, holding their breath. The system processes Mrs. Rodriguez's information, correlating symptoms and history. When the diagnosis appears, suggesting previously undetected early-stage diabetes complications, the old woman's eyes fill with tears. "All these years," she whispers in Spanish, "I thought it was just age making my feet hurt." The success ripples through the room like electricity. More patients step forward, eager to try the system. Each accurate diagnosis, each caught warning sign, builds momentum. Marisol catches fragments of excited conversation in English and Spanish. Revolutionary, incredible, finally someone who understands. Later, as volunteers set up refreshments for the networking session, a young resident approaches Marisol. "Dr. Jimenez?" Her ID badge identifies her as Dr. Camila Alvarez. "I've been following your work since med school. The way you've combined cutting-edge technology with community care, it's exactly why I went into medicine." "Call me Marisol," she replies, noting the passion in the younger woman's eyes. "Are you interested in getting involved?" "Absolutely." Camila's response is immediate. "My hospital serves a similar demographic. If you're looking for partner sites to expand the pilot, we are." Gabriel joins them, his presence drawing others into their orbit. Soon they're surrounded by healthcare professionals eager to participate, residents, nurses, clinic administrators. Marisol feels the momentum building as Gabriel outlines their partnership with local medical schools. "We'll need champions in established institutions," he explains. "People willing to push past the old ways of doing things." The energy in the room shifts from curiosity to commitment. Business cards are exchanged, contact lists grow, and Marisol watches her vision begin to take root. This is what she's fought for, not just treating symptoms, but transforming the system itself. Her phone buzzes, a message from Elena Morales requesting a meeting. Marisol's heart lifts further. Her mentor's support could be crucial for navigating the medical establishment's inevitable resistance. The next morning, Elena's office feels like a sanctuary. Sunlight streams through windows overlooking the hospital courtyard, warming the collected artifacts of a life dedicated to healing. Photos from refugee camps, thank you drawings from young patients, awards mixed carelessly with family photos. "You've started something remarkable," Elena says, studying Marisol over steaming coffee. "The Conference of Medical Directors meets next month. I want you and Gabriel to present." Marisol's pulse quickens. That could be game-changing for adoption rates. Exactly. Elena's dark eyes sharpen. "But you'll face resistance. The old guard doesn't like change, especially when it threatens their control of resources." "We've already got positive coverage in the tech media," Marisol counters, "and the pilot results will make you more enemies than friends if you're not careful." Elena leans forward. "You're challenging the status quo, Mija. That always comes with a price." Before Marisol can respond, her phone chimes with an urgent message from her clinic manager. The words stop her breath. "Fairhope Foundation pulling funding. Emergency meeting needed." The foundation's withdrawal hits like a physical blow. $500,000. Gone. The loss could cripple their expansion plans before they begin. Marisol paces her office, phone pressed to her ear as she tries to salvage the situation. There must be some mistake. She insists to the foundation representative. "Our metrics are excellent. The pilot launch exceeded expectations. The board has concerns about the program's direction," the woman replies, her tone carefully neutral. "Mr. Vega made some compelling points about risk factors and resource allocation." Alejandro. Of course, Marisol's free hand clenches. She should have expected this. Her ex-husband's influence runs deep in philanthropic circles. The petty vindictiveness of it burns, but it's the impact on her patients that truly infuriates her. The hits keep coming. By afternoon, several volunteers have withdrawn, citing concerns about the program's stability. Local news outlets run stories questioning the AI system's reliability, filled with quotes from anonymous sources that echo Alejandro's typical talking points. Gabriel finds her in the clinic's break room, staring unseeing at budget spreadsheets. His usual confidence has hardened into something fiercer. "We'll find other funding," he says, pulling up a chair. "My contacts. It's not just about money." Marisol pushes away from the table, needing to move. He's poisoning the well, making people doubt everything we've built. If we lose community trust, then we'll earn it back. Gabriel's voice carries absolute conviction. Your ex-husband has money and influence, yes, but you have something he'll never understand. Real relationships with the people we serve. Marisol pauses by the window, watching patients enter and exit the clinic. A mother guides her limping elderly father. A teenager helps his younger sister manage her oxygen tank. Each face represents trust earned through years of service, through showing up when others looked away. That night, she walks her neighborhood, letting the familiar streets calm her racing thoughts. A new mural catches her eye, vibrant colors depicting local leaders who fought for change. Cesar Chavez's determined gaze, Dolores Huerta raising her fist. The artist has captured their unwavering resolve, their refusal to back down in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Marisol touches the rough wall, feeling the texture of dried paint beneath her fingers. Her parents taught her about these fighters, these defenders of community. They didn't have wealth or political connections. Their power came from the people they served, from the justice of their cause. Her phone lights up, a text from Rosa Martinez, one of her longest-standing patients. Heard about the funding. Coming by tomorrow. La comunidad no te va a abandonar. The community won't abandon you. Marisol's throat tightens. She's been thinking like Alejandro, measuring success in dollars and institutional support. But her real strength has always come from the ground up, from the people who've trusted her with their health and hopes. The next morning, she converts the clinic's waiting room into a community meeting space. Folding chairs scrape against linoleum as local activists, small business owners, and patients fill every available seat. The air crackles with purpose. They think they can shut us down by cutting off money, Marisol tells the gathered crowd. They don't understand that this program belongs to all of us. It's built on your stories, your needs, your right to quality healthcare. Rosa Martinez stands, her voice carrying years of hard-won wisdom. We'll start a crowdfunding campaign. My daughter can help with social media, and I know people at the church who others join in, offering connections, resources, time. A local restaurant owner volunteers to cater their next event. A retired teacher offers to coordinate volunteer schedules. The energy builds, transforming fear into determination. Gabriel watches from the doorway, something soft in his expression. When the meeting ends, he pulls Marisol aside. I've been thinking, he says. What if we held a gala, not the usual stuffy charity dinner, but something that showcases what makes this program different? Let the community tell their stories directly to potential donors. Marisol considers it, remembering all the galas she attended as Alejandro's wife. Beautiful people congratulating themselves on their generosity while keeping the actual beneficiaries at arm's length. A different kind of gala, she muses, one that centers the community instead of wealthy donors. They work late into the night, mapping out plans. Gabriel's tech industry contacts could bring fresh perspectives and funding sources. Marisol's medical networks could demonstrate institutional support. But the heart of the event would be the patients themselves, sharing how the AI system has already impacted their lives. As they sort through potential venues, Gabriel pauses, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. You know what amazes me? He says. I came into this thinking technology was the solution. But watching you work, seeing how you build trust and empower people, that's the real innovation. Marisol looks up, caught by the intensity in his dark eyes. There's admiration there, yes, but something else too. A deepening connection built on shared purpose and mutual respect. We make a good team, she says softly. We do. His smile carries warmth she's growing increasingly aware of. Better than I expected. They return to planning, but something has shifted, like a key clicking into place. As volunteers begin arriving to help with logistics, Marisol feels the weight of recent setbacks lifting. They're building something larger than themselves, something that can't be measured in grant dollars or institutional approval. The clinic's motto catches her eye, hand-painted above the reception desk, Health Care for All. Soon she'll need to write her speech for the gala, find words to capture this moment of crisis and opportunity. But for now, she lets herself feel the strength of community surrounding her, holding her up, pushing her forward. Alejandro tried to break her by removing financial support. Instead, He's helped her rediscover her true source of power, the fierce, unshakable bonds forged through service and shared struggle. The path ahead remains uncertain, but Marisol faces it with renewed clarity. Some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Evening shadows stretch across Marisol's small office at the clinic, painting the walls in muted gold. Her laptop screen casts a soft glow over scattered papers, patient testimonials, grant documents, clinical trial results. She leans back in her chair, fingers hovering over the keyboard as she shapes tomorrow's gala speech. The words come slowly at first, then faster as she finds her rhythm. Healthcare isn't just about technology or funding. It's about dignity, about seeing people as more than numbers on a spreadsheet. Her fingers tap steadily, surgeon precise. When we launched this AI diagnostic program, people said it couldn't be done, that bringing cutting-edge technology to underserved communities was too ambitious, too risky. A smile tugs at her lips as she thinks of Miguel Rodriguez's latest scan results. Clean margins, no recurrence. One success story among hundreds now, thanks to the AI system's early detection capabilities. She weaves these victories into her speech, grounding lofty vision in concrete impact. The office door creaks open and Gabriel's familiar scent, coffee and clean cotton, precedes him. Still perfecting that speech? Marisol looks up, noting the shadows under his eyes that match her own. They've both been working overtime to prepare for tomorrow. Just finished the first draft. Want to hear it? He settles into the worn chair across from her desk, his tall frame making the space feel smaller. Always, she reads, watching his reactions. When she reaches the section about community impact, his eyes light up with that intensity she's come to recognize, the look that says he's seeing possibilities others miss. But at the mention of initial setbacks, something vulnerable flickers across his face. "You know," he says when she finishes, "my first 3 startups failed completely. Lost everything except my student loans." He runs a hand through his dark hair, slightly rumpled from a long day. "Everyone said I was crazy to keep trying, that I should stick to safe corporate jobs." Marisol sets down her notes, struck by this glimpse of honesty from someone who always projects such confidence. "What changed? I stopped trying to prove something to others and started building what I believed in." His gaze meets hers, warm and steady. "That's what you're doing here, Marisol. This isn't just about impressing donors. It's about showing them a vision of healthcare they never imagined possible." The truth of his words settles in her chest, easing some of the tension she's been carrying. Outside her office, she hears the bustle of volunteers preparing for tomorrow. Rosa's voice directing people, boxes being moved, excited chatter in English and Spanish. Speaking of donors, Gabriel adds, "The foundation called. They're sending their entire board tomorrow." Marisol's heart jumps. The foundation's support could mean expanding the program nationwide. But before she can respond, Rosa pokes her head in. "Dr. Jimenez? We've got all the presentation materials ready. Maria helped me organize the patient testimonials by impact category, just like you asked." "Gracias, Rosa." Marisol smiles at the woman who's become so much more than a former patient. "I don't know what we'd do without you." "Probably get a lot more sleep," Rosa teases, then disappears back into the hallway. Gabriel stands, his movement drawing Marisol's attention back to him. "I should let you finish up here. But Marisol?" He pauses at the door. "You've already won. Tomorrow is just about letting everyone else see what I've seen since day one." The warmth in his voice makes her chest tight with something she's not ready to name. After he leaves, she opens her desk drawer and pulls out the silver bracelet Sophia gave her last month. The words Fuerza y Fe catch the light as she slips it on, cool metal against her skin. The clinic's motto, "Healthcare for All," glows on banners outside the convention center as Marisol's car pulls up. Camera flashes spark in the growing dusk, reporters gathering to document what could be a turning point in community healthcare. Gabriel steps out first, then offers his hand to help her from the car. His touch is steady, grounding. For a moment, she lets herself lean into that strength, drawing deep breaths to calm her racing heart. Then she straightens, adjusts her blazer, and faces the crowd with the same focus she brings to the operating room. Tonight isn't about her nerves or her past. It's about the future they're building. One algorithm, one patient, one life at a time. Inside, the grand ballroom has been transformed. Screens display patient testimonials and AI diagnostic success rates, while elegant table settings shimmer under crystal chandeliers. The contrast between luxury and purpose mirrors Marisol's own journey, finding ways to bridge worlds that once seemed impossibly far apart. As she takes her place at the podium, the room falls silent. Hundreds of faces turn toward her: donors, doctors, community members, press. Somewhere in that sea of people are her parents, watching their daughter step into the spotlight she once thought wasn't meant for people like them. Marisol's fingers brush her bracelet, drawing strength from its familiar texture. Then she begins to speak, her voice clear and strong. 3 years ago, a 12-year-old boy came to our clinic with headaches. His mother had already been turned away from 3 hospitals because they couldn't afford the necessary scans. Today, that boy is captain of his soccer team, and our AI diagnostic system has helped identify similar cases in clinics across Los Angeles. She weaves personal stories with data, painting a picture of healthcare transformed by technology and compassion. The audience leans forward, caught up in her vision of a future where zip codes don't determine health outcomes. As she concludes, the silence holds for one breathless moment before applause erupts. But through the thunder of clapping hands, she hears it, the sharp click of expensive shoes on marble, a sound she'd know anywhere. Alejandro stands at the back of the room, his tailored suit a sharp contrast to his haggard face. Recent news coverage of his firm's ethical violations has left its mark, aging him beyond his years. He starts moving toward the stage, that familiar, determined set to his jaw that once meant board meetings and hostile takeovers. But Marisol doesn't move. She stays at the podium, chin lifted as he approaches. The room's energy shifts, hundreds of witnesses to this unexpected confrontation. Quite a performance, Alejandro says, his voice carrying in the sudden quiet. Always the crusader, aren't you? But we both know this is just another way to play martyr. The old words land differently now. Where they once might have cut deep, they feel hollow, desperate. Marisol looks at him, really looks, and sees not the powerful man who once made her doubt herself, but someone small, trapped in his own limited vision of success. This isn't a performance, Alejandro. Her voice remains steady, professional. These are real people, real lives changed. I'm sorry you never understood that. He opens his mouth to respond, but another voice cuts in. Rosa's, clear and confident from the front row. Dr. Jiménez saved my son's life, not for glory or money, but because she believes everyone deserves care. Where were you when our community was suffering? Others join in, a chorus of voices sharing stories of lives touched, families helped, hope restored. Alejandro's face flushes as he glances around, finding no allies in the crowd. His carefully crafted narrative crumbles in the face of simple truth. Without another word, he turns and walks out, shoulders stiff under his expensive suit. The click of his shoes fades into silence. Gabriel steps to the podium, his presence warm at Marisol's side. I have an announcement, he says, and the energy in the room shifts again. The Global Health Foundation has just confirmed a $50 million grant to expand our program nationwide. The room erupts in cheers. Marisol feels tears prick her eyes as she watches her team celebrate. Rosa hugging Maria, volunteers high-fiving each other, her parents beaming with pride. Years of work, of fighting against doubts, both external and internal, have led to this moment. Later, after the speeches and champagne toasts, after the last donors have pledged their support and the press has filed their stories, Marisol sits in her office at the clinic. The quiet feels different now, not heavy with uncertainty, but peaceful, full of possibility. Her phone buzzes with messages of congratulations, including one from Sophia. You did it, Hermana. Never doubted you for a second. A soft knock draws her attention. Gabriel stands in the doorway, his tie loosened, looking as tired and happy as she feels. The foundation representatives want to start implementation planning next week. They're talking about expanding to 20 new clinics by year's end. Marisol nods, already mentally mapping out the logistics. We'll need to adjust the training protocols, maybe bring in more. She trails off as Gabriel crosses the room and kneels beside her chair, taking her hands in his. That can wait until tomorrow. Right now, I just want to say, he pauses, choosing his words carefully. You amaze me, Marisol. Not just your brilliance or your vision, but your heart. the way you fight for what matters. The warmth of his hands around hers feels right in a way she's not ready to fully examine. We make a good team, she says softly. We do. His thumb traces circles on her palm, and I'm in no rush to change that. Whatever comes next, we'll figure it out together. The next morning dawns clear and bright. Marisol walks through the clinic, now humming with renewed energy. Volunteers discuss expansion plans, doctors review AI diagnostic reports, and patients fill the waiting room with hopeful faces. She pauses at the front desk where Rosa is training a new volunteer. Dr. Jiménez, Rosa calls out, remember that high school student who's been shadowing me? Isabel? She just got accepted to pre-med at UCLA, says she wants to be just like you. Marisol's heart swells. Tell her to come see me. We'll talk about the mentorship program we're starting. In her office, she finds a letter she wrote last night but hasn't sent. It's addressed to Alejandro, not in anger or triumph, but with hope that he might find his own path to meaningful work. She seals it, adding it to her outbox before turning to the day's tasks. The AI system hums quietly in the corner, processing scans and data, while on her walls, new certificates hang beside old family photos. Outside her window, she can see the community garden they started last month, another small way of growing hope in concrete spaces. Gabriel's voice drifts down the hall as he leads a tour for potential program partners. She catches fragments about scalability and impact metrics, but mostly she hears the passion in his voice, matching her own belief in what's possible. Her bracelet catches the morning light, Fuerza y Fe, glinting like a promise kept. Marisol touches it briefly, then opens her laptop to begin work on the mentorship program outline. There are still battles ahead, systems to change, lives to touch. But now she knows they all know that change is possible, one algorithm, one clinic, one dream at a time. The story spreads beyond their city, carried in medical journals and social media posts. A neurosurgeon who left wealth for purpose, who combined cutting-edge technology with grassroots healthcare. But Marisol doesn't focus on the headlines. She focuses on the work, on each patient who walks through their doors, on each young doctor-to-be who sees a future they never thought possible. Years later, she stands before a room of medical students, her hair touched with silver, but her eyes as fierce as ever. People will tell you something can't be done, she says, watching bright young faces absorb her words. They'll say the system is too big to change, the problem's too complex to solve, but remember this, nothing is impossible. It just hasn't been figured out yet. The students rise in applause, and Marisol feels the future pulse with possibility. In her mind, she sees that first small clinic, hears Gabriel's voice sharing his vision, feels Rosa's fierce hugs and Sophia's steady support. All the pieces that built this moment, this legacy of hope. She touches her bracelet, worn smooth now with years of nervous habits, and smiles. The journey continues, but the path ahead is clear, lit by the countless lives they've touched and the countless more still waiting to be reached. In the end, that's all any of us can hope for, to leave the world a little better than we found it, to show others that change is possible, to prove that with enough faith and strength, we can build the future we dream of. The applause fades, but the energy in the room remains electric with possibility. These students will carry her story forward, adding their own chapters to the ongoing work of healing and hope. And somewhere in that audience, Marisol knows, sits another young dreamer who just needs to be shown what's possible. She steps down from the podium, ready to begin another day of figuring out the impossible. Thank you so much for watching and listening to our story. Your time and support mean the world to us. If this video resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. Your engagement helps us grow and continue sharing meaningful stories. See you in the next video.